5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
How about we do it again?
6, 7, 4, 3, 2, 1. I think I farted.
Okay, let's try one more
I
time.
definitely
Ready?
I can move you. Making review. Making review.
Say
6,
6, 5,
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome to episode 67 of Rank and Review. In this episode of the podcast, your host and random Canadian Larry Parsons and his friend Rick Fair are going to review 6 movies on the theme of Tales of Madness. And I hope you go into this podcast, as usual, expecting the typical coarse language and spoilers that always accompany the Rank and Review podcast. Please seek out the show on iTunes or on Facebook. If you were to give me a positive review on Facebook or a like on iTunes or vice versa, that would be really great for my morale. A positive review on iTunes is really helpful for people catching the show and getting more people to find it. And those likes on Facebook are just a nice way of telling me that there are people out there who appreciate what I'm doing. Without further ado, welcome to Tales of Madness. Okay, so welcome, Rick Fair.
Yes.
This is another one of the times where I've got a guest with me for Rank and Review, and thank you so much for doing this.
No problem.
Who I know, but I don't know particularly well. So
Right.
this is going to be like probably the longest conversation we've had in our lives.
Most definitely, yeah.
But that's interesting because, like, I have no way of knowing where you're going to land on some of these movies.
Right. You know,
And I think we've got a pretty divisive list in some ways. Like, there's a lot of movies in here that do have a love-hate
yes.
response.
And I think you might find one of my choices interesting, so
Okay.
we'll see.
We'll find out where that happens. But, so my dear friend Dorian sort of put this together. So a little shout out to our peeps, Dorian.
Hey, Dory.
And I gave you a whole bunch of lists to look at.
You bet.
And of that stew, Tales of Madness is the one that jumped out at you. Was there a movie in there that particularly spoke to you? Why was
It's all
this
about
list?
Silence of the Lambs.
It was all about Silence of the
Yeah,
Lambs?
that's
That was
all.
the one you wanted to talk about, that movie? The rest just came with it?
Well, Citizen X7, of course, are definitely the top ones. The two Stock and Pathology I've never seen. And, of course, everyone knows...
Natural Born
Natural Born
Killers.
Killers, yep.
So yeah, it's an interesting list of movies. The theme here is, unsurprisingly, madness. It's not quite a director masterclass in that some of these are people's first features or whatever. But we have sort of covered this topic in the past in the show. And I am sort of flexing a little bit. Typically we're more about horror. Maybe not so much lately. The last few episodes have been a little bit different. But I think that... especially the good thrillers, especially when we're talking like something like Silence of the Lambs, it really does ride that edge right to coming over into horror. As far as
you could go either way, really. Thriller, horror, it's all good.
And I think that one's a particular special movie to me in that it was sort of a movie that legitimized horror in a certain way.
It brought it to the mainstream.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
It won Oscars.
Yeah, lots of Oscars.
And it was about a dude who was trying to make a suit out of ladies.
Yeah. Yes, inspired by real life Ed Gein, by the way. So I think that's the part that draws me is that they're thrillers, but a lot of them are based on actual people, events. So
there's seeds of truth behind it.
Yeah, that's the scary part for me. It's not ghosts for me. It's the human psyche.
Is this more your bag of movies then? Do you for psychological thrills?
Psychological and zombies. Those are my two biggies.
You and I would get along just fine.
I'm sure we would. Yeah.
I'm sort of a every flavor kind of guy. There's a few things that I'm not a big fan of. Tron.
You got the
You
Tron
got the
shirt
Tron
rocking. You
shirt
got
on.
the
I
Revenge
got
of the Dead.
Revenge of the Dead going on in mine. So
Right on.
But I will give almost any movie a shot. It's only until the digital age where there's been times where I'll actually... It has to be a really bad movie for me to say, no, I'm not watching this anymore.
I think there's been like maybe 2 or 3 times where I said, no, I'm out.
Yeah,
but
and there's now such an oversaturation of material that's just dropping every day. Like, if it's going to kill your evening to finish this one, then I will move on to somebody else's dream project.
Right.
I'm not in love with all of the movies that we're going to talk about today, but I do think that everybody involved here was trying to make an earnest study of madness. And it's a fascinating topic. Cinema will never run out of, ingenious serial killers.
No, they won't, because they'll always exist.
There is something about it. Why is it, do you think, that we like, for instance, a character like Hannibal Lecter?
I think he's an interesting character just because he is like a educated man. He's top tier and everything, and he's just got this darkness in him, and I think that represents a bit of a darkness in all of us, really. Yeah. Maybe not to his extent, but we all have a little bit of dark in us, and just allows us to play with it a little.
Yeah, he's a lot more approachable, isn't it? He's not like Leatherface or Jason or someone who's just going to kill you.
He's a nice guy.
Yeah, and there's an aspect of weird intellectual revenge to a lot of his kills. It's like, you may not have done something so wrong as to deserve death, but you have done something that has rubbed him the wrong way, that has displeased him.
Free-range rude.
But it's interesting because nowadays we are seeing a flood in television, especially, of TV shows that are based around unlikable characters. Some people think Breaking Bad started it, but I would even go further back. I would say like Oz and The Sopranos, a lot of the old HBO shows. Yeah. Where our central character is kind of despicable.
Yeah, Tony Soprano, he's a bad man.
Yeah.
He's a bad man.
And we watch his very slow descent in the state of television. If I'm going to have unlikable characters, I would rather it be in a 2-hour package than a 2 or 10 season package.
Right, exactly.
Because if I'm going to invest all this time and energy in it, like... I thought Breaking Bad was a good show, but I didn't watch all of it. I just got worn out.
Right. I watched it all just because I'm a bit of a completist. Yeah. So I'm like, all right, I'll finish. But I was not the raver guy that everyone was. So
the day may come, but as a rule, after I watched an episode, I felt like I needed to take a shower.
Yeah.
And I'm a guy who can watch the Friday the 13th movies, or I can watch a creature feature. I can watch violence. I'm not particularly affected by it, but there's something about the focus on the negativity that is so weird than popularized now. We have a TV show about, Psycho, about Norman Bates, the TV show. We had Hannibal, the TV show. Game of Thrones is the most nihilistic television show in history, I think. Like, who do we cheer for anymore? It's interesting.
It's been a shift over the decades.
I'm bringing this baggage into it because that was a lot in my mind when I was watching these movies. Because I think I like a lot of these movies as a single serving dose in a way that I wouldn't.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, if I was to watch a 7 over a 10-year span, I'd probably want to kill myself.
Oh my god.
It's such a depressing movie. So yeah, I don't want to watch 10 seasons of 7.
All right. Well, I think we've covered it, but I'm going to say it one more time for the cheap seats. Today on Rank and Review, Rick Fair and I are going to look at David Fincher's 7. We're going to look at a medical student thriller called Pathology, Oliver Stone's Natural Born Killers, an original for HBO film Citizen X, Stuart Gordon's Stuck, and we're going to wrap it up with the much mentioned and much lauded Silence of the Lambs.
Right on.
Is there anything you want to say before we get this started?
Yeah, I'm good. Let's rock.
County Morgue. That's the most hands-on program in the U.S.
That's why I'm here.
Dr. Gallo. Meet Dr. Gray. Ted comes to us top of his class from Harvard. I expect you two will get along quite well.
They have the talent.
There are 6.5 million people in this city.
What we need is less of them and more of these.
To trace any cause of death.
Why don't you come and join us?
Fine. Go be with your dead people, doctor.
To the dead.
They have the skills.
If you could kill anyone, who would you kill?
I am interested in what Dr. Gray has to say.
Truth is, you're all full of it.
To get away with murder.
Tomorrow night, just you and me.
Doing what?
Nothing too exciting.
You killed him.
Maybe. The point is how.
What is this, a game?
Exactly.
All right, so one of the two movies that I presented you with that you have not seen, you said, was called Pathology.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure whether to apologize to you or not, but here we are to sit and discuss it.
Right.
The creative team behind this, the writers Neville, Dean, and Taylor, sort of specialize in batshit crazy. Like, they are responsible for the Crank series.
Okay.
And I remember seeing the first Crank movie and thinking, yeah, that's absolutely as bonkers as you can push anything and still call yourself a sane human being.
Right.
And then they did Crank 2, and I was like, yeah, see, you just proved my point.
Right. Never had the privilege of seeing Crank 2, so.
Yeah, it is yards stupider than the first one.
Okay.
So you get the idea. They co-wrote the Jonah Hex movie. They're responsible for the second Nicolas Cage Ghost Rider movie.
Right.
So when you're coming into Pathology, especially since we're just coming off of a discussion of 7,
yeah,
we've got to put this in a whole different tier of movie.
Definitely.
This is one of these sort of exploitative, sort of erotic thrillers.
Mm-hmm.
It's a different tier. It is still a tale of madness.
Yes.
And it is still a tale, again, I think, where our central characters are all deeply flawed.
Yeah.
I think that's the central problem I have with the movie. I think it's an energetically told story of this medical student who gets corrupted by this gang of super intelligent but super crazy fellow students who have this game of putting bodies in the morgue and trying to hide how they were actually killed. They're basically perfecting getting away with murder.
Yeah.
And as these sort of sinister games tend to, things escalate.
No.
Yeah. So that's the basic plot. My problem mainly is not so much with the acting or the execution, or just my general space of wanting to care more.
I'm on the same page. I enjoyed the premise of the movie. Was good.
Yeah.
It was beautifully shot. I thought the cinematography was great. Yeah, and I just didn't give a rat's ass about any of them.
Here you can witness me destroying this poor guy's name. It is directed by a man named Mark Scholarman.
Sure.
He's got those little inlots.
Oh, right, yeah.
Scholarman. And I do think totally talented. Like, you can tell people behind the camera know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
People in front of the camera are pretty. They can say their lines without tripping over their feet. You know? It's fine. I wanted one character that I could like, and I guess the only character in the whole movie that you're allowed to like is Alyssa Milano.
See, that's part of the biggest crime for me in the movie is they give Alyssa Milano an uninteresting part, really, and then they just kill her off.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, well, that's the biggest... I would have been much more interested if she was one of the psychopathic surgeons, to be honest.
I couldn't help but think, because Alyssa Milano is such a heavily sexualized figure, I don't think I'm saying anything too controversial.
No, not really, no.
She's almost in that neighborhood for me, is because when I was a kid, she was a kid. I kind of feel like I grew up with her.
Okay,
it's kind of like I accidentally walked into my cousin as she stepped out of the shower or something like that. I just like...
You're like, I don't want to see that.
No, I'm not as into the Elizabeth Milano as a sexual item, but she is ridiculously worshipped and sexualized. And in a weird way, I can see her saying, okay, well, in this movie, I'm going to give the boys exactly what they want.
Right.
They're going to see everything in the most repulsive context possible. We're sort of given, and for better or for worse, it's one of the more powerful images of the entire film. We're shown what it looks like when someone basically does the opening incision on an autopsy.
It's a bit of a, I would say, torture porn
scene. I guess she's dead.
But it's skirting on the edge.
But it's a character that we've seen, that we've liked. It's basically the only character, like I said, in the whole movie that we like.
Yeah.
And we see her cut open, and we see like the muscles peel apart, and we see her body sort of sag as if she is cut open. And it is vile.
It is pretty vile, yeah.
And the tone of the movie is not necessarily the grim, ouch, torture tone.
No.
The tone, I think, wants to be closer to something like, I don't know, Fight Club, going back to Fincher.
Yeah, I could see that.
It wants to have this sort of manic energy. Yeah, we're crazy, but we're going to tell this story so quickly and with such style that you're not going to notice how crazy and batshit everything is. So, yeah, there's positive things to be said, but what I see in this movie is potential.
Yeah.
And
it just doesn't fall, it just doesn't pop. It just doesn't come together for me.
And I would watch this filmmaker's next movie. You
Yeah.
know, I guess I could at this point say I've seen enough of Neville Dean and Taylor that I'm not a fan.
Right.
But I think this director could do more.
I definitely think so, because like I said, it was beautifully shot, well constructed. Acting was okay. Wasn't like Oscar acting by any stretch of the imagination, but
it's a pretty people cast.
Yeah, it's a pretty people cast.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful person movie. I get it.
There's nobody in this movie that's just okay looking.
No.
Q from Star Trek is in it.
Q, I love. Yeah, that was on my notes. Yeah. Anytime I see Q somewhere, I'm a fan. So, so that was a bright spot.
But this is what I'm saying. Like, that's the most normal looking person in the entire movie.
Definitely,
in a lot of ways.
Yeah, the regular guy.
It's an interesting thing to exploit, I think, and I like the theme of this episode is Tales of Madness. And I often thought, I've known a few people who have taken some gross anatomy courses, and like, I think it takes a special type of psychology and a certain type of personality to just sort of stand at a table and
pick apart a
human body, even for a completely, educational, there's no personal stakes in it. Like, it's just weird to just,
let's pull this out.
My friend Jen, I remember telling a story once saying, well, today I watched them saw off the top of a head like a bull. And for the first time ever, I held a human brain in my hand.
It's like, do I really want to do that?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
I think that, like, part of when you get into it that you're going to be doing that stuff. And I don't know if necessarily part of you wants it, but you have to be able to get past that.
I think viscerally we're all interested by it. Me and my wife have an Instagram account, right? And we follow a pathologist, right? We scroll through all his pictures, and there's no holds barred there, right? Like, you can't show a nipple on Instagram, but you can show a guy's decapitated head. I don't understand it myself, but whatever. But so like we spent like 2 hours scrolling through pictures the other day. So the visceral psychology is in all of us. Would I want to do that personally? Probably not.
But I think it's a good thing. Like, the thread is a good one to exploit, because I think that it attracts a lot of altruistic people. Like, I work with a lot of law enforcement officers, and I would say that it's true of them and likely true of a lot of doctors. It's sort of like split between people who grew up all kind of altruistic and just want to help the world and think that being a doctor or a police officer is the best way to do that. Or there's the people that just like the idea of being a
cop
or like the idea of being a cop. Exactly. And sort of that psychology of someone who would wade into this and, if that would change him. I kind of wish that the movie was like 5 or 6 notches less crazy. I think that maybe if instead of everybody in that class being psycho, if just maybe one guy was, and we had to figure out who it was, I would be connecting with it a lot more.
I think maybe the main antagonist, I don't just remember his name at the moment.
Kavanaugh is sort of the worst of the
doctors. He was the worst, and he just I think he went a little too far gone for me. I think I would have liked him to have a little more control. Right?
He was playing it just a little bit too up, because you have to believe that he would be able to get away with it and people not think that he's obviously crazy.
Yeah, but you can obviously see he's got some marbles rolling around in his head, right? Plus, surgeons in general are ranked as the highest people for sociopathic behavior.
Really?
CEOs, surgeons, they just have this nihilist, not really nihilistic, but feeling that they're better than everyone. They have the life in their hands.
They work with such high stakes every day.
Yeah.
A CEO can make a decision that will affect hundreds of thousands of jobs, or a surgeon can slip with the blade and end someone's life.
Exactly. Right? You got to be able to disassociate yourself from your actions, right? Which is what sociopaths and psychopaths are able to do. They don't feel the empathy toward the person. So taking a guy's heart out to replace it doesn't affect them the same, which was probably what makes them good surgeons. I'd probably want a sociopath as a surgeon, right? I want calm nerves.
Maybe there's a purpose to having sociopaths around after all.
I think there is, really.
But it's interesting that how much more interesting the conversation we're having is than this movie that we're talking about.
Right. Yeah. And why were they smoking crack? Why crack?
Yeah, it was just pushing it to the limit. And the main character, whose name is going to totally escape me here, Ted Gray is the main character's name.
Okay.
He's got this beautiful girlfriend who loves him, and he's this genius med student. He's going to end up with worst case scenario, he's going to leave rich and successful over the rest of his life.
Well, he's already got a job lined up with his future father-in-law, right? Yeah. We see that scene with Alyssa Milano and her father.
It's all golden.
Yeah.
And he is so easily sucked into this evil.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it ever used to be a thing where, like, we would absolve main characters of the sin of, cheating on their girlfriend just because, but the girls were so hot.
So
like, he
hot.
was like, what was he going to do?
Yeah.
Not fuck them?
Yeah.
Well, actually... Yeah.
yeah. Don't. She's the town bike. Everyone's riding her. You have Alyssa Milano sitting in the background.
Flags everywhere that you're being clearly manipulated. And once they have the dirt on you, you're
done.
You're screwed. So I didn't like the main character. Couldn't sympathize with the decisions he was making. I couldn't anticipate what he was next move would be because he wasn't, looking after himself. He was one of these characters who was a slave to the screenplay. What he did made sense to keep the movie exciting, but not make sense to keep, common sense.
Yeah, he needed to do things to keep the plot going, but they didn't really make much sense in the big scheme of things. I think the most sympathetic character would have been the teacher, Q.
Yeah.
The Q character, because he's trying to mentor him. He's trying to pull him back. There's a couple
Stay
scenes
away
where he's
from
like,
these guys.
Yeah. You have so
Every
much
word
potential.
he says is true.
Yeah. And he just says, fuck you. I'm going to go slash some more throats.
Don't tell me what I can and can't do.
Yeah. Okay.
It definitely is a tale of madness. You could certainly do worse, but I would have a hard time getting excited recommending Pathology to anyone.
I will say the creative way that they ended Kavanaugh at the end, that gets a thumbs up.
Yeah.
Freezing his body so he can't move but still feel pain, and then just start going in on him.
We're going to do an autopsy. At some point during the autopsy, you're going to die.
Yeah. We don't know when. We're going to find out, so have fun with that.
There's some clever moments. The gas booby trap is well done.
Yep.
It's like, all right, the movie kind of lit up for me, but it's outclassed, I think.
Definitely.
By the movies we have around.
I would agree.
Anything else you want to say?
No, Pathology, you can give it a pass.
You were made uncomfortable by all this sexuality.
By the sexuality and crack. Give it a pass. Watch the director's next movie is my advice.
Rick, I don't know you. Watch a dirty movie.
Body was found on Tuesday morning.
I hate this city.
We're gonna get who did this.
This will be the very definition of swift justice.
There are 2 more bodies, 2 more victims.
This guy's methodical, exacting, and worst of all, patient.
He's laughing at us.
He had a gun.
He's 2 murders away from completing his masterpiece.
Hey! Let's finish it.
Brad Pitt, Morgan Freeman, Gwyneth Paltrow.
Have you ever seen anything like this?
No.
7.
All right, so David Fincher, very, very interesting director. He was sort of mined into Hollywood from music videos. He's got this sort of somewhat Kubrickian reputation in that he will do 1,000 takes to get that one take that he wants, and that he can be a bit of a grumpy customer, and that there's a certain specificity that he demands. There's a famous story on the set of Zodiac, one of the newspaper sets. He was digging around in a filing cabinet in the back room, and he found papers in that cabinet that were not to period, and threw a little tantrum. Nowhere in the script or in the shooting list that day were they required to look inside that filing cabinet.
Right.
But Fincher needed to fucking know. And one of the things that is very impressive when I look at 7, even now, because it came out in 1995, is that it does have the look of someone who is very specific.
Very particular, yeah.
There's nothing accidental in any of these shots, in any of these scenes. And with the sort of loaded springtrap of the screenplay that we have here, Although it's a movie that is loaded with familiar archetypes, the two downtrodden detectives, the rainy atmosphere, the up-and-coming newbie, and sort of the hard-worn veteran, learning and improving because of each other. All tropes that you can take from any cop movie you've ever seen. But it's elevated. It's on a different level.
It's different, yeah.
So I've tipped my hand. I'm a fan of 7, but
I will tip it as well.
Where do you land?
Big fan of 7, yeah.
This was the movie that sort of decided Brad Pitt for me.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, I liked him in the past. I really liked him in this movie, California, with a K. Yep. And I'd seen him in sort of smaller roles, but I thought he was good. And then I'd see things like Legends of the Fall, and it would rub me the wrong way.
Yeah, I don't want to watch this.
That vampire, Interview with the Vampire movie, right? Just wasn't sure where I landed on Brad Pitt. Then I saw 7, and I was like, okay, he's a movie star.
I would agree with that. I was definitely not a fan beforehand. Like you said, California with David Duchovny.
Yeah.
Great movie. But for me, it was 7. I don't think he's topped it since, really, in my mind.
He's been in some great movies, but maybe I'd have to think about that. Don't hold me to it.
I won't hold you.
For the moment, I will agree with you.
Yeah, you could hold me to it. It's all good.
Did you see this in the theater? Did you have that privilege?
7? Yeah, I did see 7 in the theater, as a matter of fact.
So it's pretty common knowledge now, but at the time we watched it, I had no idea Kevin Spacey was in the movie.
Nope.
They didn't include his name in the opening credits scroll. John C. McGinley,
which was genius, by the way.
Yeah, it was well played.
Yeah.
John C. McGinley is heavily featured in the opening credit sequence, which could have, if you're looking for who could the killer be.
Yeah.
John C. McGinley is a really great character actor, regular of Oliver Stone's catalog. So you thought maybe it would be him, but no. McGinley sort of is the head of the squad that sort of kicks down the doors. He spends most of the movie wearing a gas mask.
Yeah.
We hear a lot of his dialogue, but we don't see very much.
Which is a good touch, actually. Yeah.
So, and well done. But when Kevin Spacey walks into the police precinct and turns himself in,
detective,
which is where the movie really goes to the next level.
It kickstarts it.
Yeah. Until now, it's just been a procedural, a very, very good procedural. But when our killer turns himself into the police and seems to willingly give up this game, that's when everything goes okay. What now?
Everything's turned over on its head, right? It's like you're not used to seeing the killer, turn himself in. You're used to seeing them hunt him down and kill him, right? Like that. So this is a totally different take on it. So
I'm going to just do a quick service to the plot, really quickly.
Yeah, I could do it.
Brad Pitt has sort of proudly been moved to the toughest precinct in New York, and I think it's New York, right?
Yep.
And he can't wait to get his hands dirty, and he meets Somerset, played by Morgan Freeman, who's on his way out, and is going to sort of try to adjust him to this world that he is so embracing. The world that Brad Pitt's keen to embrace is the world that Morgan Freeman's character cannot wait to escape. And you can sort of see the years of damage it's whirled in his face. So we sort of see the old dog, new dog dynamic as they investigate this series of homicides, which seem clearly to be based on the 7 deadly sins. A person who is greedy is bled out. A person who is vain is made to make a decision about whether to stay alive or be ugly. Or die and not have to live with disfigurement. Sort of moralizing, ingenious serial killer. That's where we start. And if you're just reading the back of the box, I can see a lot of people saying, I've seen that movie before, putting it down.
No, you haven't. You have not seen this movie before. No, definitely. I think the part that really got it one of the parts that really got it for me was when they were going through his stuff and they found just the myriad of notebooks of just his notes, no dates, no nothing, just his mind poured out on paper, and it's just bizarre.
You just cry for the production designers.
Yeah.
Because some dude had to
write
fill
every single one. He doesn't, because he didn't want an empty notebook on that shelf.
Absolutely not. Nope. It's the same thing it always goes back to The Shining for me, but the all work and no flame
Jack a dull boy.
Somebody had to type out all of those lines because they were using that footage, and each page needed to be a little bit different.
A little different. There was no photocopying there, no.
Right? Oh, the glory of film.
Kubrick is a bastard.
Arlie Ermey sort of has a supporting role as sort of their commander-in-chief, the man sort of running their corner of the investigation. always loved that actor, and I always love seeing him playing the non-drill sergeant role,
Yeah.
because we associate him as that
Yeah.
Sergeant Hartman from
Full Metal Jacket.
He's
Yeah.
just that guy,
Yeah.
and I love him here as just a world-weary guy and
he's
calling
a
the shots, and you
Yeah.
believe him.
You
believe
do.
him.
He's a bit like Somerset that way. He's a
Yeah.
bit downtrodden. He talks about a murder that happened 4 blocks from the precinct, and he didn't know about it. He read about it in the paper, right?
Yeah.
So you would think like the chief of police would know about a murder that happened 4 blocks away, but he had to read it in the paper, right?
Yeah, and there's so many of those that had come across his desk that there was just another one.
Yeah.
And it is a nihilistic movie, and that tone is set very early. The dark sort of blues and grays throughout this film. Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman are wet the whole movie.
The whole movie is wet and miserable, which is just how the director wanted them, I'm sure.
It's amazing to me that a movie that was so much about, it seemed for the first hour, about procedural, and at the time I thought, you're perfecting this procedural. This is as good a procedural as I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I only was thinking that because I hadn't seen Zodiac yet.
Right.
But, at that point, I was like, this is great. But then, like I said, it's all upended because they never do catch the man.
No, they
Not
don't.
by any legitimate means. The closest they get to him is through breaking the rules.
Breaking the rules.
frankly.
They didn't bend. They broke them.
They just frankly broke the rules, and they had to, break even further rules to cover their ass about it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So the nihilism goes through to the fact that they weren't close to catching John Doe. John Doe turns himself in. And that is the moment. I think that is the moment that the movie goes from being a really good sort of standard serial killer thriller to something kind of exceptional.
Something different, something new. Yeah.
At the time, Kevin Spacey was in the middle of this incredible hot streak. Just everything he did seemed to be gold. Usual Suspects and Seven and Swimming with Sharks, and he was just a hit machine. And to have him and keep him in the back pocket for this movie,
over half the movie, probably, right?
And once he shows up, it could be one of those scenes like he's basically giving a Bond villain speech for the last half an hour of this movie. Like
pretty much, yeah.
If he had a beard, he'd be stroking it.
Yes.
give him a cat to pet in his lap.
Totally.
And if the stakes hadn't been set so well, and the sort of dark tone hadn't been set so well, we could be laughing at him, but we're not laughing at him.
There's not really a point in the movie where you really want to laugh.
Yeah. Question.
Yeah.
What do you feel about Gwyneth Paltrow?
I thought she was good.
Yeah.
I thought she was good in it. Yeah, she was believable. The scene where she told Somerset where she was pregnant.
Yeah.
I think that was a key scene in the whole thing, and I think it really set her character up for the ending.
I can't take credit for this. I didn't actually notice it, but I watched a documentary on Fincher, and he chose very specifically how he was going to frame her.
Okay.
In the movie, and you almost always just see her head.
That's true.
And if it's just a shot of Gwyneth Paltrow, if it's not like multiple people in frame, you're just looking at her head.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think even when she's in the kitchen, I think there's like a banister or something in front, and you only see the upper part. Yeah, I think you're right.
It's an interesting conscious choice, and when we go, and we're safe for spoilers here, so you can feel free to talk about it. But considering her fate, that is an interesting choice. It's interesting too because I didn't notice it. I don't know if that was something that was just for Fincher, or if it was something that a more savvy person would have picked up on.
I don't know.
But it's interesting, yeah. Of course, Paltrow and Brad Pitt were together at the time, so this makes this movie probably a heartbreaking thing for both of them to watch in this stage of their lives. The movie works, and like I said, it's just full left and right. Richard Schiff shows up in a supporting role as the lawyer of John Doe, which is a really implacable thing to play because you're defending a monster.
And he knows. You can totally tell. He doesn't really look like he wants to be there.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's so often played as like, this is my job and I'm okay with it. And it was kind of refreshing to see the lawyer, this is my job and I'm
not okay with this at all, but here it is.
Yeah, some
do what you
people
want.
have jobs that they don't like, and right now my job is to defend
this guy. Yeah.
So, great attention to detail. I would encourage anyone and everyone to watch Seven again and again.
Definitely.
Do you want to get into the ending? Is there anything you specifically want to...
I've always been a big fan of the bad guys winning at the end to a certain extent. I can't help it. It's a thing for me. So But the first time I saw it was I can usually see endings coming.
Yeah.
Because I'm that kind of guy. I want to try working it out as I go, but didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
So well done.
It's interesting. I am a broken record because I'm something that will say again and again and again in movies that I like. I will say, cut the romantic story out of it. I don't care about him going home or about how he's neglecting his wife for this case. Like, I don't want that scene. No. I never want that scene, right? And this movie seemed very specific, like I said, in all of its choices. So why were we spending so much time showing this vulnerable, delicate, needy wife, Gwyneth Paltrow? Well, there's a very clear reason for it.
Because she didn't really fit into the story, right? Until her head fit in a box, right?
She was the one voice of optimism in a nihilistic world, and as a consequence, her head ends up in a box.
Yep.
And the villain not only wins, but he kind of destroys the Brad Pitt character. I'm of the opinion that the Brad Pitt character would likely not spend a day in jail.
Probably not.
For killing this guy.
He would probably spend some time in some psychiatric institution for a time, and then
he's done being a cop, and he probably gets a timeout in a psychiatric institute.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
But I don't think he does jail time
He's
either.
not going to jail.
I think that's what you call temporary insanity.
It's the definition of that.
Totally.
Anybody on the radio listening to it. But it was something that was genuinely shocking. And it was something that for a lot of people lost the movie for them. Like, they know how these movies are going to end. Like I said, if you were in the video store, which I realize don't exist anymore, and you were looking at the back of the box telling yourself, I've seen 7 before, you haven't.
Nope.
And you haven't because it's not just that the bad guy gets away. It's that he is victorious.
Yeah, he doesn't only get away, he gets released, and he's victorious. And he's destroyed everything and everyone around him that he wanted to.
His plan was executed to as perfect a way as he would have ever hoped.
Yeah.
As he would ever hope.
And I still can't see a box without going, what's in the box?
What's in the box? No, I love the movie. I hope that nobody listening to this has just had a spoiler because I will put a very special spoiler warning at the beginning of this episode.
That's good, because there are people who haven't seen it.
Yeah.
I know it's hard to believe, but there are.
And it's different, you know, if I'm talking spoilers about Halloween 4, people give less fucks.
Yeah, exactly. It's Halloween 4, right? Exactly. He goes around chopping people.
You mean Michael Myers kills people?
Okay, no. Got it.
This is
how dare you?
This is a little different.
Yeah.
And John Doe as a figure of evil and as a villain. Impressive.
I think naming him John Doe is another nice touch. You never know his name.
No fingerprints, no nothing. He cuts off the end of his fingers. He's just like, dark. Enjoy 7.
Definitely.
Platoon. Wall Street. Born on the 4th of July. JFK. Oliver Stone's vision has changed the way we saw our past. Now he takes a look at where we are and where we're going. And you will be shocked at what he sees. Mickey and Mallory. Feared by thousands.
All right, very controversial filmmaker we shall talk about now, Mr. Oliver Stone. He's an interesting fellow. He makes divisive films.
Yeah, you're on one side of the fence or other with his films. There's not much middle ground,
When this movie came out, Natural Born Killers, I remember just being super excited. This was right in the sort of heyday of Quentin Tarantino fever.
Yep.
He had originally a credit on the screenplay, but that got changed to a story credit. So it's now a story by Quentin Tarantino, screenplay by Oliver Stone, blah, 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 blah. So we have Woody Harrelson and Juliette Lewis sort of playing Mickey and Mallory, going on this cross-country sort of crime spree. And the whole movie is this fever dream dissertation on the media and on violence. And it's this like crazy fever dream collage. It is yelling at you. It is, it is teaching you things. And I remember, I saw it opening weekend and I stumbled out of the theater and I honestly didn't know what I thought. I was. It was like this was maybe just not the movie I wanted it to be,
right.
or what was this?
You just never seen anything like it. Yeah. You didn't know what to think of it.
This wasn't Pulp Fiction 2.
No.
This wasn't Reservoir Dogs. I was sort of lost and in a daze. I could latch on to things that I knew that I did like Woody Harrelson and Robert Downey Jr.
Yep.
Memorably giving, I think, 2 of their better performances of their careers.
I would agree with that.
Personally, in this movie. But I have a hard time reconciling the style, the violence, and the themes. And I don't think I'm alone.
It's interesting you say that, because I'm on the same page. Okay. Yeah, because I thought this is where we were going to disagree, because everyone's all, natural born killers, but I'm not of that ilk.
Okay.
So
we're closer to the same page. Yeah. It's a movie that I want to like.
I just don't. Like you said, there's interesting parts. It's well acted, well shot, well everything. I just I don't like it how it tries to hit you over the head with the sensationalism of violence in the media and stuff like that. We know that. I don't know if they expected it to change anything, because it clearly hasn't, right? So I don't know what he was expecting to get out of it.
Any statement that he was making as far as sort of our numbness to the media, or how much of a punchline, suffering has become, was accomplished by the Rodney Dangerfield sitcom sequence.
Definitely.
And that was like one of the first sequences of the movie.
Yeah.
There is a broken reality. There's, red light spills on people's faces. There's cuts with animation in it. They're constantly reminding you that you're in the movie, that you're part of this media storm.
And there's canned laughter when he's groping his daughter.
Absolutely.
They're very distasteful, right?
I think for me, and I've watched it several times. I'll revisit it every now and then, trying to catch up with everyone else who tells me that it's an amazing movie. And I finally kind of arrived to this place where I think the movie is hypocritical. I think that this movie is condemning us for loving violence,
but telling us to love this movie.
But at the same time, the only thing compelling us to keep watching one scene to the next is this ridiculous violence.
Yeah.
Now, and I can see Oliver Stone leaning back in his chair saying, "Oh, hell yes, clever me, clever me." But I sit back in my chair and say, no, fuck you.
Fuck you. Clever us for figuring it out.
If you're going to make a grungy, dirty crime noir movie that Quentin Tarantino clearly wrote, where Mickey and Mallory are some sort of fucked up backwards
Bonnie
anti-heroes,
and Clyde type characters, right?
Just make that movie.
Yep.
And if you're going to make a movie about how the media will spin evil into something that's palatable and even, worthy of a t-shirt to go back to 7, then do that.
And you don't even have to do that nowadays. All you have to do is turn on the TV.
Yeah.
Right? It's right there for you. It's already done. In fact, you may have helped it. So, thanks.
Generally speaking, if you're going to yell at me, and this movie is yelling at me, have a point.
Yeah. Yeah. It yells at you, it beats you over the head through the whole movie, and at the end, you just feel kind of empty.
Media is bad, violence is bad, people are bad, credits.
Yep. Oh, and the bad guys get away. This is one of the movies where the bad guys win, and I didn't care for it. So.
Yeah.
Which goes and gets a grain for me. So.
Well, to me, it just seemed like they get to their next inevitable chapters. Sooner or later, Mickey and Valerie die in a hail of bullets, and all that does is raise their star another level.
Yeah.
Even when they lose, they win.
Yeah, exactly.
But again, I feel like I've been a little bit savage to it too, because there are great moments. I do think, Woody Harrelson has come a long way, from Woody from Cheers.
Woody from Cheers, yep.
And this movie is a big part of that. And I do think he's a very strong actor. He's got amazing supporting work in No Country for Old Men.
I always love his work.
Yeah.
Every time I see him in a movie, I'm like, oh, right on, Woody Harrelson. I don't watch a movie for Woody Harrelson, but I always enjoy it when he's in it.
There's a short film in this movie when they get to the prison.
The prison, yeah.
And Robert Downey Jr., who's sort of playing a Morton Downey Jr., sort of crossed with some sleazy British
tabloid guy,
dude.
Yeah.
Very well. But this interview that the two have of them, I think both of them are just amazing. And I think for the first time in the whole movie that now we've calmed down and we've actually started to tell a story.
Yeah, now we can actually see what's going on.
Yeah. And it's that sequence, as crazy as it gets with the prison riots and the Tommy Lee Jones howling.
The caricature of Tommy Lee Jones.
Yeah. that is still crazy, it is still ridiculous, and the violence gets to a whole next level thing. But at that point in the movie, I started to fully engage. But that point in the movie is like almost 2 hours into this 2.5 hour movie, and that, to my money, is too long.
I agree. Yeah.
What do you think of Juliette Lewis?
I like Juliette Lewis. I loved her in Dusk Till Dawn.
Yeah.
Great. I don't think she was perhaps the right person for this role.
She's an interesting choice.
Definitely. She wasn't bad.
There's something kind of make fun-ofable about her. We keep going bumping into other movies here, but I talk about California. She plays this supporting role in California, where she's so stupid as to almost be on the level of mentally ill. You know, like she's a child essentially, and it's that same character. It seems highly sexualized and with this very much getting off on violence, like tying sex and violence explicitly through her character.
Yeah. I don't see Juliette Lewis as any kind of sex symbol to me, though.
No.
I just don't see it that way.
No. And I don't know. I mean, it's hard for me to say, like, they should have gone this way with it, or what would it have been like with someone else. But the fact that we're having that conversation maybe says something.
Yeah, maybe.
I can't imagine who else other than Woody Harrelson would have given us that performance.
I thought he was great.
Yeah.
The scene where he shaved his head before the interview, thought that was well done.
Yeah.
So Robert Downey Jr., of course, awesome when he's
as usual.
When he's not coked out of his head anyway.
Well, and he would have still probably been coked out of his head in this time frame.
I guess.
But I think that he latched onto a character. So many roles around this time in the mid-'90s, no matter what the movie was, you know, Shortcuts, Richard III's, whatever, he was playing it quirky. He had this manic energy because he was just full of manic energy.
Exactly.
And probably couldn't help himself, right? I will say that I don't see him jonesing his way through this performance.
No.
I think that this is one of those roles where you could say this was evidence as to why Downey Jr. was a talent worth waiting for.
Yeah.
You know?
I totally agree. Yep. And he was a talent worth waiting for, because it took him a long time.
He's like this, like I said, this Jerry Springer type of figure, and he is so awful and so willing to exploit crime to his own ends, and so despicable. And yet, when it comes to the point where he is facing his own demise and knowing it, I can't help but feel a little sorry for him.
Just a little bit. Yeah, there's a little bit of sympathy for him.
Yeah.
Not a great deal, but a little bit.
What I don't connect to is this sort of self-aggrandizing of the Mickey and Mallory characters. Like, the fact that they believe their own press, the fact that they don't know that it's a stupid circus, that they're getting everything wrong, kind of takes away their power a little bit, too.
Yeah, because it's not really their story anymore. It's the story that's being spinned about them.
Yeah.
Right?
And they're willing, like, who they will kill and who they won't.
Yeah. Well, there's that moment where he feels bad about killing the old Indian fella, right?
And that just makes me shake my head. Really?
Yeah.
You killed a restaurant full of people who are guilty of nothing other than stopping in for a slice of pie.
Yeah.
But shooting this one guy, like he tried to help you and you lashed out in a momentary sort of burst of anger and killed him. But like all of a sudden you have a conscience. All of a sudden we're supposed to like sympathize with you. All of a sudden you have a heart. No,
I don't.
That does
I'm
not work.
I'm not buying that at all.
At all.
I could buy her feeling bad for it, perhaps, right? Which she does. She was very angry with him for killing him, but I don't buy him feeling bad for it.
I will give it points. There was one thing, there's a ugly sort of subplot where Mickey Mouse, it's not all love and roses with Mickey and Mallory. Like, they fight. In which case, Mickey is not above picking up a female hostage and raping and murdering her. And giving that scene, as ugly as it was, and usually the type of stuff that I don't particularly look forward to in movies, is another way of not letting them off the hook, of not making them heroes.
Right.
So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But, I don't know. Like, there's just so much. Animated sequence. Leonard Cohen on the soundtrack. Tom Sizemore getting his nipples squeezed.
Oh man!
Tommy Lee Jones screaming at the top.
I almost forgot about the nipple squeeze. Yeah.
Balthazar Gigetti being shot for not giving good oral sex. Like, you are just constantly being obliterated by images, and again, being yelled at. I don't mind being taught, but this is a strict schoolmaster, and I don't think he's got a clear course or a rationale. He's just saying, media bad, violence bad, media bad, violence bad.
Yeah, yeah, and it's his way or the highway, right? It's like, this is the way it is. That's it.
Not too long ago, I talked about his Best Picture winning, and I think to a degree, I'd have to watch all the movies of that year, but to a degree, deservedly so, Platoon, which was, by contrast, a very composed study of war and violence and hell. So it stings a little bit more because I know that he's capable of telling an incredible story.
Platoon was an
real
outstanding movie.
It really is. It really is.
But not so with Natural Born Killers.
A lot of people consider this as high tempo. A lot of people
I
love
know.
the Natural Born Killers, and I might get some hate over this. And
well, I'll probably get some hate too. I'm sure there's a lot of my friends and family who might listen to this and go, "Oh, Rick, you're fucking not. You're wrong."
I will say that there's enough interesting in it that it's probably worth a look, but I can't honestly say that I liked it.
Yeah, I don't think you're gonna get anything out of it. I didn't.
Some good performances, some cool moments.
Yeah, I don't feel.
Some questions.
If I never saw that movie, it wouldn't. My life would never be any different.
Yeah.
Right. There's movies that affect your life, right?
It affected me to the degree, like I said, that I do come back to it. That I have revisited it. Like, I may not have owned it. I kind of inherited this with my dad's movie collection.
Okay.
He passed away, so it kind of. I'm sure that sooner or later I was going to bump into the movie again, but. It's like, I hear so many people tell me what an amazing movie this is.
Oh, Natural Born Killers, Natural Born Killers.
I wish I could be excited about it.
And I usually don't say anything. I'm usually just gonna keep my mouth. Yeah, I'd keep my mouth shut. And
let's pick our battles.
Yeah.
Now, if they start talking shit about Tremors, then
we have a problem.
It's gonna get real.
Tremors 2 or 3, maybe.
As many as 17 stab wounds to the face and eyes.
52 victims.
32 stab wounds with additional disfigurement.
One killer.
Of a nature that suggests not so much a sharp instrument as teeth.
This is the story of the world's most deadly, most prolific, and most evasive serial killer in history.
There's another body in the woods.
This is the true life story of the hunt for Citizen X.
Every piece of garbage within 200 yards of here checked out. Fingerprints and fibers and bodily fluids. Every can, every bottle, you understand me? If we're going to fail, it won't be because of something we left undone.
So you lucky fellow, have not one but 2 movies starring Dreamboat Stephen Ray.
You betcha. Hottie toddy.
What a mug on this guy.
He's a character actor.
He's got the saddest sort of droopy dog eyes in the business. I do think that he's a good actor. And, you got to sort of choose how you pick. Where you're going to put him, but I like the man. I think one of the many very chilling things about Citizen X is that it's kind of underseen, and I think that it's a really good movie that people need to find.
Definitely.
And that the story told about this serial killer Chikatilo, and his over 50 victims, most of which were children, is true.
It's chillingly true, and it's actually... I'm a bit of a serial killer. I wouldn't say fanatic, but I read up on them.
True crime fan.
Yeah, true crime fan. So I've read up a lot on Citizen Chikatilo, and it's very accurate to the real life story, which is horrifying.
By all accounts, it's a Cole's Note sort of version of what happened. The people who were in charge changed a lot over the years, and in this movie they kind of streamline it. It's usually the same 3 people that this guy has to account to, but basically he's a medical investigator, and they keep finding bodies of children in this forest, and he wants to find the killer responsible. But this is Cold War,
Russia.
And they want to be careful how things appear. And according
serial killers are a decadent Western phenomenon.
Yeah, and it's funny to hear that line said, especially by Yas Aklin, the villain from Lethal Weapon 2. He's just like a guy born to be a Bond villain. It's got that villainous face, right? But it's you can't laugh at it because it's true. And what we see through this story is that the investigation is actively impeded in the interest of violating the rights of gypsies and homosexuals because they refuse to admit that serial killers could even exist.
Could even exist,
And the collateral damage to the left and right of this is devastating.
Yeah, it's extensive and deep, right?
I gotta say, this movie, it was made by HBO sort of early in their original programming years. This is 1995. I think that they came up with as an engaging, as a potent thriller as I've seen anywhere on the big screen.
I would totally agree. This one kind of fell in my lap. It was a video store pick. We were talking about video stores that no longer exist.
Once upon a time.
Once upon a time, yeah. And just the shelves were empty that day, and that one was sitting on it. And I'm like, all right, I'll give it a watch. And that was it. I was hooked. I had to have it.
It just knocks you over, right?
Yep.
Now, one of the people that I also want to talk about in this movie, oh my God, Jeffrey DeMunn, who plays Chikatilo himself. Walking Dead's fans will recognize him from the first 2 seasons of The Walking Dead. It's a great performance, and that actor, I think, really delivers because he typically runs on a charm. He usually played as that likable guy who delivers exposition and then gets killed off.
He's not likable in this movie.
He's broken, he's fragile. You could sort of see where his evil comes from.
Yep.
But the portrayal is utterly chilling.
Oh yeah, and the worst part is he looks a little like Mr. Dressup.
Yeah,
doesn't he?
There's something very innocent. Like I don't know if that was part of the casting too, but you trust this face.
Yeah.
Until you know what's behind that face.
Yeah, you feel a little sorry for that face, right? You're like, oh, look at that poor guy.
He looks like a school teacher having a bad day.
And he was a school teacher.
Exactly.
And he had some pretty bad days.
So he's used to talking to children.
Yep.
So he knows how to talk to and manipulate children.
Yep.
So he is able over this, was it 10-year period almost?
Yeah, it's probably 9-10 years, yeah. I think it was like 78 to 88, 89 when the wall came down, right? Something like that.
Yeah, at the time, Stephen Ray was a bit of a name because of the popularity of Neil Jordan's movie, The Crying Game.
Crying Game, yeah.
But HBO dropped some cash and did some sort of, flash casting, and they got Donald Sutherland and they got Max von Sydow.
I love Max von Sydow.
Love both of those actors. I would just listen to those
their voices all the time.
Anything.
Yeah, totally.
Sutherland's character is sort of the one guy who's working with the brass that seems to really genuinely be on our protagonist's side, and is working like hell to make things work from
as much as he could, right? Because he couldn't go too far, otherwise he would have been out, and then he would have been our main protagonist would have been all on his own.
But basically, what it amounts to, for the most part, is making sure that he's able to keep his job.
Well, it's Cold War Russia. It's watch my ass first, then I'll worry about yours, right? Yeah. And you definitely see it with his.
Yeah. And what we see in the Max von Sydow character is sort of Russia's sort of first steps in the science of psychological profiling, where you have this guy who's given all the ingredients of this case, of this scenario, except for the person responsible, and from that map, from all of these years, from all of these crime scenes, develops almost out of the air, just out of intuitively, really, a psychological profile. What kind of mindset does this?
Yeah.
And when he gets his interview with Chikatilo, one of the first thing he says is that he's incredibly nervous.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, is like, are you scared to be talking to a killer? Are you nervous because you want to know how close you got on your psychological profile?
Yeah.
It's played so well. It's played so well.
And he's definitely nervous.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the line that was really good for him was to be a psychologist in Cold War Russia is to be an expert in paranoia.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm sure it is, right? The interview he has with Chikatilo, and he just goes on and just reads out his profile.
Doesn't even ask questions.
Yeah, just brilliant. It was like, that's the perfect way. And you just think, how's that going to work? But it worked like a charm. That's exactly what he did.
He was just unspooling rope.
Yeah.
He was going to give this guy all the rope he needed to hang himself.
Yeah.
Even a nod would have done it. But and I think that what really works is that to be understood, I think, would be such a relief to Chikatilo.
I know. Too, right? At this point, he's just got to be bubbling over. I can't imagine the kind of pressure that would put on a person to have that in you.
In a way, it seems more composed than the actual footage. I've seen some footage of him from the trial, and he just seems like a frothing lunatic in that footage.
Word is that he played that. He was trying to get off with insanity play. A lot of that was him playing it up,
trying to save his own life.
Yeah,
I buy that. just there's so much fascinating about it. The psychological weight that's put on the Stephen Ray's character that almost destroys him.
Mm-hmm.
When they find out that the Americans, when they have people in similar investigations, will shuffle them off to a different case every 6 months.
And when he told them that, and he apologized for it, and he just broke down, and he's like, "I'm sorry," right?
You have to imagine, like, if my job, there's not a lot of high stakes, and like a lot of people work in offices or in the service industry, and they deal with stress. But if your job is collecting the corpses of children found in the woods
and trying to find
who's
doing it,
to use the clues left on their broken bodies to find the person responsible, and years are going by and you're not stopping it, the psychological effect would have to be devastating.
I couldn't imagine.
Like, it's such a fascinating movie, and it's sort of amazing that it took HBO to get it made. It seems so hungry, maybe just because it took place in Cold War Russia.
That may be something to do with it,
but I can't think of a lot negative to say about the movie.
I can't think of anything. It's one of my top movies of all time, so I have nothing bad to say about it. It's not for the faint of heart,
no,
right? Because it's if you don't feel something after watching this movie, you maybe should be starring in one of these movies. But
there's 2 scenes that are in this movie that I can pull right now that just burned into my retinas as much as any scenes from any other movies that we'll see in this list. There's a scene where this boy steps aside to have a pee, and this stream of urine unearths this skull.
Yep. At the very opening scene.
Yeah, and just that image is such a horrible...
Yeah.
There's nothing not horrible about that.
And that's the first thing you see.
Oh my god.
Yeah, so...
And then there's a scene where he's in the killer. We know he's a killer, and of course the woman who's with him doesn't know. Makes the mistake of starting to laugh because he seems to have
sexual dysfunction.
Getting up, and he doesn't respond with words. He responds by putting a knife into her chest, and she goes from laughing to screaming in this one shocked moment, and it's just... Oh, it's so chilling.
And there's a pause right after he sticks the blade in where she's in shock, where she doesn't... There's laughing, there's a pause, and then they're screaming. And it's just like, ugh. Yeah. It's not a pretty scene.
It's a tale of madness, and for me, I think it's got a little extra weight on it just because it is a true story. As much as the nightmares imagined in Seven and Silence of the Lambs were horrifying.
Yeah.
This one, I can't get the escape clause of saying that it's just made up by some sick screenwriter.
No, it's not made up. It's real life, baby.
Yeah, and I think that makes it more horrifying. For good or ill, it's got extra points because it took its facts from the real world.
And they had him early on in the early 80s. They had him in custody.
And they fucked up some testing or something.
Well, the testing was... what it was, it came back, the sperm sample came back different than the blood sample, right?
Right.
So later on, years later, it was brought to foreknowledge that they fudged the results. But the person involved said, "Oh no, you can have 2 different." Trying to save their ass, saying you can have 2 different types of sperm and blood, which you can't, right? But that was just them covering their ass, and they had him, and they let him go.
You've said you've done some reading about it. Is it true that they were using it as an excuse to sort of attack the homosexual community and gypsies? It's like, it's probably one of those groups that's responsible for this, and either way, if it is or it isn't them, if you arrest them, we're doing a public service.
Yeah, we're doing a public service, and yet they actually did that. Yeah,
that's crazy.
I know, which doesn't surprise me at all. Which is even scarier, right? Any excuse. So, the story of the boy they brought in that got hung in the cell.
Right.
I don't know if that part was true or not.
Okay.
But the rest of it is.
Wow.
Yeah.
Another great moment I just want to bring up when he's finally given enough resources so that he can actually set and spring a trap, and he's got uniformed, visible police on all these train stations except for one.
Yep.
The actual day that they catch the guy, or the ID officially who the killer is, unfortunately coincides with one body, and the guy who had been there. Again, I don't know if it's a dramatic license taken by the movie. If it is, I forgive it. Not only had he been there all day and just left to go take a piss in the woods, but the woman that was found was related
to him. From what I read, that was a true story. It was his cousin from a different village.
Oh my god!
Yeah, or his niece.
Oh my god!
Niece or cousin? I don't remember which one. Yeah. And he happened to. He just looked odd. Is what he said. That's why he held him up. He didn't accost anyone. He just looked odd, and that was him.
It's a very, very good movie, and it's a movie that kind of a lot of people missed. Mm-hmm. So I was kind of surprised when you said, yeah, I have heard of that, and I have really liked it, because a lot of people, everyone knows Silence of the Lambs. Mm-hmm. Everybody knows Seven, whether they like it or not. Yeah. Everybody knows Natural Born Killers, whether they like it or not. I think that this movie is totally worthy of mention in the same breath of those.
Oh, definitely,
and a lot
without
of people
a doubt.
have not seen it. So.
And it just skated underneath the ice somehow. HBO released it, like you said, in its infancy of being a cable TV powerhouse, right? And it just kind of got lost in the shuffle somewhere. And I'm glad I found it.
And hopefully there's somebody else who will find it now because of my podcast.
Yeah, do it. Awesome movie.
Cheers.
Look at you.
You gotta help me.
Help you with what?
It's in my garage.
I thought you said you hit a guy.
Yeah, he's the guy.
Yeah, but you didn't say you hit a guy and brought him home with you. You ever thought of calling 911?
Take me to a hospital. Just go to sleep. What the hell happened to your car?
Brandy hit something. A deer.
Did you kill him? Kill him?
So we've talked about Stuart Gordon in the past in the podcast a few times. He's sort of a cult figure. I don't know how you were with 80s zombies movies, but he did bring us the original Reanimator.
Awesome movie.
Yeah.
I love Herbert West.
Yeah, and he's an interesting director. I recommend it. It's sort of, it's rough-hewn, but I think it's got a lot of positive qualities. This H.P. Lovecraft adaptation called Dagon.
Yep.
He specializes in sort of low-budget, crazy movies. And he has this willingness to go places that other filmmakers won't. He's unabashed about the fact that genre cinema is about sex and violence, and that's part of what you pay for when you put your money down. And he's just okay with it. He's okay with it more than a lot of directors seem to be. And it's not necessarily to an exploitative level. I mean, you got to go on a case-for-case basis. But when you're watching this movie and, you're getting a graphic depiction of an adult diaper being changed, as you mentioned, or you're seeing this woman stark naked getting a beat down, even if I didn't know I was watching a Stuart Gordon movie, those moments would tell me, oh, I'm watching a Stuart Gordon movie.
Yeah, exactly. Well, like I said, one of the main totes I had was nothing like watching somebody get the shit cleaned out of their ass, right? Yeah. So that part sticks with you.
Yeah, it makes an impression, and that's the thing. When you establish a moment like that early in a movie, what it does psychologically is to establish within the viewer this thing that we're not going to hide anything from you. We're going to show you everything. So this is the second movie we have, like I said, with Stephen Ray. And if we thought that he was an unlucky, miserable bastard in the previous movie, actually, no, he's probably still more unlucky in Citizen X.
Probably, but you feel more for him in this one for some reason.
The 24 to 48 hours that is depicted in his life in this movie, it starts with Stephen Ray just an unbelievable run of horrible luck. He's been rendered jobless. He's rendered basically homeless.
Yep.
And is at the end of his tether, and it just couldn't get worse.
Oh, yes,
until he literally runs into Mina Savari. Well, Mina Savari literally runs into him.
Technically, I suppose, yes.
And he ends up stuck half in her windshield, his legs destroyed by the bottom of the car. And she, instead of calling for medical attention or emergency services, drives him home, parks the car in the garage, goes inside, has a nap, has a shower, and goes to work.
Yeah.
Such is the premise of Stuck.
And that's it. That's the premise of Stuck.
Yeah. Now, I called this whole episode Tales of Madness. And it's interesting, in like most of these cases, we have a psycho killer.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody who is just run on this engine of violence where they need to kill.
Yes.
I think that our psycho in this case is clearly not Stephen Ray. It's clearly the Mina Savari
Definitely,
character. But what's interesting, and what I think maybe should be a strike against it, but for me isn't, is that she's the killer and I don't understand her. I don't feel like the movie solves for me why she chooses to not help this man.
It was a series of bad choices, but you don't really understand why she made those choices, right?
Once it gets to a point, like once it's gone so long and she hasn't done anything about it, well, she sort of has to become resolved because it's gone on too long. But I want to know the why.
Why, yeah. I get initially when she ran into him and he got it. Yeah, he got exactly shock. She was drunk. She was high, right?
Yeah.
So she's panicking. She's like, "Oh my god, I don't know what to do here. I'm going to park him in my garage, take a nap because of shock." But everything after that is, I don't just call 911 and help the guy out.
But it is something specific and psychological. Like she is got a rough life and a rough existence. She's a healthcare aide, so she does literally deal with other people's shit, as we mentioned.
Yeah, who just got promoted.
Yeah, she's got a boss who's obviously really shitty. She's got a boyfriend who's obviously really shitty, and her prospects, even her goals, seem sort of slight,
muddled.
But her continuing to insist on making this bad decision, and maybe I'm talking my way through it as we talk about it now. She's in a job she doesn't like, and she's with a boyfriend that on some level she knows, I think, that she can't really trust.
Who's he's a bit of a phony himself, too, we find out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He's a poser.
Yeah.
But how that translates into her actually being angry to the Stephen Ray's character, to the point where as late in the game as he's struggling to escape, she actually has the incredulity to scream at him, "Why are you
doing this to me?" Yeah.
I think it's kind of fascinating. Like I'm interested in the puzzle of the movie. The question of whether or not the movie solves it or answers that puzzle can sort of be you
can take what you want out of it, right?
But I think it's worth a look just because of those questions that it asks.
Yeah.
So that's where I land. I like it, but I feel like a little bit unresolved.
It's based on a true story. Apparently, I didn't have a chance to read up on it. I couldn't find it online or anything.
I think it's based on a true event. My guess is they've taken quite a bit of
liberty with it. Yeah, but yeah, like you said, you don't understand her motivation for not doing what needs to be done.
Yeah,
and. I just don't understand her character. I understand everyone else's. I just don't understand hers.
It's brutally rendered, and as much as you can imagine that Stuart Gordon would, Stephen Ray's legs being broken, and not just broken, but sort of caught up in the grill of the car, and him having to unhook himself, and his slow and miserable escape. Like, even if this guy was a huge piece of shit, which is established he is not. He would be just on his side because of the physical ordeal that he is put through.
And the cell phone being 2 inches from his fingertips the whole time, and he can't move because his torso's impaled on the broken glass in the windshield. He's not just halfway in the car; he's impaled halfway in the car. Right? To be able to have to peel yourself up with the windshield taking out your guts at the same time. No.
See, like, this is a movie that would, like, maybe be in the thriller section or, like, but it feels almost horror movie to me just because of the visceral ick of it. Just because of the ouch. I want to give some points to Mina Savari. I never thought she was a terrible actress, but I mean, I guess I've never been completely knocked over by her either.
Right.
But Mina Savari is one of these Hollywood actresses who grew up very wealthy, riding horses and, in grand estates, and who's an actress because she wanted to be an actress.
Right.
So she gets to be an actress because she's pretty and wealthy, She quite convincingly plays a very low-status character, sort of trapped in a minimum wage rut that you'd think that someone like Mina Savari would find difficult to relate to.
But you make a good point. She didn't find it difficult to relate to at all, I don't think. I think she played it well.
I think that it's one of the few, like, fairly juicy roles that she's been offered. And it's kind of nice to say nice things about her, because I did a review of this remake of Day of the Dead that she was in, and I was saying not nice things about her, because she actively sucks in that movie. She does not actively suck in this movie.
No.
So, I mean, save some hope for Mina Suvari.
Yeah. Not a fan of the cornrows, though.
No, but
it makes her a little more street, I guess, which is where her character was.
Yeah, and this sort of image of strength that she's trying to project. She's obviously vulnerable, and there's always sort of this weak vibrating underneath it, but she will not show it. And, like, when her boyfriend betrays her, instead of beating the shit out of her boyfriend, she beats the shit out of the woman that he's with. Right? There's always pushing this stuff outward. It's one of those things where I feel like there's maybe something in there where I could solve the puzzle. Like, I could figure it out. But I haven't yet.
I think maybe she's caught in between two worlds, perhaps. She's definitely got the ghetto side, right? Where she's dating a gangbanger. Got the cornrows going and all that stuff, right? She's in the bad part of town. But then she's also skirting the edges. She just got a promotion. She's maybe building herself up in her life, right? Trying to get to the other side, right? And that's where she kind of is with the accident. She's kind of torn between two worlds. Right? Do I just get rid of this guy, or do I actually help him? And she just can't do either.
Yeah. But, like, if she had just called the emergency service an accident, said that it was an accident, which it was, I mean, it would have been bad for her.
Yeah.
But it certainly wouldn't have been as bad for her as things played out.
No. I guess the madness would be temporary madness in this case.
Yeah. Because by the end, and I mean, we'll go with spoilers, maybe I won't say implicitly what happens to her, but she does not live through the film. And by the time it happens, it's a horrible, horrible fate. I do not feel for her.
Nope.
And I probably should, but, like, it's a human being.
It was unpleasant.
Yeah,
Let's
it's
just
a
say
human
that.
being who's meeting a really, really bad end. But by that point, she had once again had the opportunity to just let this guy walk away.
Yeah, but she was about to meet out that bad end on him. Yeah. So
it was all self-inflicted. Yeah. Like, it was all her on self-destruct. And maybe that's what I sort of connect to. Maybe this sort of plague of anxiety and depression issues that culturally we seem to be having now is our some crazy part of our psychology that does work actively against us, that actively lines itself against our
self-defeating
goals. Self-defeating voice in our heads that some people have louder than others. Some people can see through it, but
and I think we all have that. It's the general theme, right? We all have that little bit inside of us, that little bad bit, or if you want to call it that.
Yeah,
that just makes us, perhaps not all of us clearly, but makes some people do really bad things and make bad choices.
It's a tiny movie. It was a low-budget movie. It kind of came and went. It's 85 minutes long, minimal time investment. It's one of those movies that could rub people the wrong way just because the content in it is pretty severe. But I think that it's worth the look, and I certainly think it deserves to be included in the discussion of Tales of Madness.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I think it's definitely worth a look. It's 85 minutes. It's not very long, which is actually about perfect. Much longer. It probably wouldn't have played out very well.
It could have overstayed its welcome, considering it really is a guy trapped in a car.
And you can only go so long with that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
He's still stuck in his windshield, and the peripheral characters aren't interesting enough to carry another half hour. So,
But it's just another one of Stuart Gordon's sort of quick and dirty, interesting, no-budget thrillers. And he's got a few of them, and I'll take as many as he's going to serve.
Yeah. Totally.
You spook easily, Starling?
Not yet, sir.
He's past the others. The last cell. I'll be watching. You'll do fine.
A killer is on the loose.
Keeps them alive for 3 days. Then he shoots them, skins them, and dumps them.
A rookie FBI agent is on his trail.
He's got real physical strength, cautious, precise, and he's never impulsive. He'll never stop.
But in order to track him down, she'll have to match wits.
I'll help you catch him, Clarice.
Believe me, you don't want Hannibal Lecter inside your head.
With the darkest of all minds.
Just do your job, but never forget what he is.
Oh, he's a monster. Pure psychopath. So rare to capture one alive.
So close to the way you're going to catch him. Do you realize that? Oh, Clarice, your problem is you need to get more fun out of life.
You told me you don't spook easily.
You call this easy, sir?
Lester's missing an arm. Man's a raving maniac. Who knows what he'll do?
Thank you, Clarice.
So 1991 was a pretty interesting year for cinema, and like I said at the introduction, this movie we're talking about, The Silence of the Lambs, basically swept the Oscars that year. As far as a horror movie goes, which a lot of people would call this, it was kind of unprecedented. Jodie Foster won her second Academy Award. Anthony Hopkins won Best Actor, despite the fact that his character has like 10 minutes of screen time.
Like 11 minutes of screen time for
something
a
like that.
2-hour movie.
Yeah. He's clearly a supporting role, but everybody loved it so much they just gave him the big statue anyway. And there was also the flip side of the coin. The gay and lesbian groups around the world sort of picketed the movie because it was yet another high-profile horror movie. One, it turns out, in a long line where the killer's sexuality is sort of portrayed as sort of symptomatic as to what led him to becoming a killer,
right?
You know, because he's confused about his homosexuality or whatever.
Yeah, he decides to kill people, right?
So it became the sort of lightning rod for that. And it's win-lose for the movie. I mean, it gave them some negative press, but it also gave it free promotion and blah, blah,
Any
blah.
press is good press.
It's tricky, too, for me, because I do think it's a really good movie. And as much as I can sort of agree on a basic level with what the complaints were, and that both, you know, the Hannibal Lecter character and the Buffalo Bill character have that shadow to their backstory.
Yep.
If shadow's not the right way to put it, but for the point of their argument, we'll put it that way.
Sure.
I get it, but I don't think that the movie is about that.
I agree. I don't think it's about Hannibal Lecter or Buffalo Bill.
It's about Clarice Starling.
Yeah.
And that's what everybody seems to forget when we're talking about Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah, that's the only they just remember Hannibal the Cannibal and Buffalo Bill, but it's much more than that.
Jodie Foster won her second Academy Award in a row for this movie. And I think that part of the big strength of Silence of the Lambs is that central character.
Yep.
This 5'0" but tough as nails FBI trainee who is sent in quite deliberately by Jack Crawford to interview Hannibal Lecter because he knows that Hannibal Lecter will like her and want to make a connection with her, and in so doing perhaps actually give some information that will help them stop this serial killer Buffalo Bill, who is skinning women in an effort to make a suit for himself.
It's interesting. I never thought of this before, but it just dawned on me. The character of Clarice Starling being manipulated by a high-ranking FBI agent to do something for them is very reminiscent of Dana Scully in the X-Files, having a high-ranking FBI agent using her to get something done. Huh? I never considered that before.
Scully's a fair analog in that I sort of see, you know, Clarice, at least in this story, is tough as nails and uncompromising and get the job done hero that women and men could get behind. The Clarice Starling is the thing that I think that I have to tell everybody to embrace, because in 1991, all of this was like new and amazing, and we hadn't seen this sort of scale and spectacle presented into this psycho killer genre.
Yeah.
In 2016, we've seen it so much that if Silence of the Lambs was to come out today, it would have been laughed out of the theaters.
Yeah, but every movie since then has Silence of the Lambs to add.
It's got the fingerprints on it, absolutely. The sort of ingenious serial killer, the Hannibal Lecter mold, is something that we'll come to again and again.
And again, because it's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. But what really, really serves the movie is the Clarice Starling.
Clarice Starling and the relationship she has with the men in the story.
Because basically, this movie is what the movie that Seven was presenting itself to be, right? It's a police procedural that ends more or less the way we expect it to. The movie completely stops for about half an hour before the last act for this sequence of Hannibal Lecter escaping,
Mhm.
which is great that we can leave the movie with Hannibal Lecter escape.
Yep.
But the interesting thing is that could be a deleted scene on the DVD, and it wouldn't hurt the narrative of the story being told.
Yeah, I wouldn't argue with that.
I want that scene in the movie. I'm not saying cut it.
No, of course not. But
I am saying this is just a separate mini movie that happens adjacent to this really effective police procedural. I will say, maybe controversially, that today the Silence of the Lambs is just less impressive than it was in 1991, just from use and wear, because of how loud and strong its influence has been.
And
I'm not going to
overuse. Yeah.
I'm not taking points away from it for it. I'm just saying that if you've already seen a dozen movies that were photocopies of this, when you come back to it, maybe you'll sort of wonder what the fuss was about.
Yeah, well, if you were to watch the Hannibal series, the TV series,
exactly,
before you watch Silence of the Lambs, you're probably not going to think the same thing of the movie.
Exactly.
Right? Because they just go way far beyond what Silence of the Lambs did on the Hannibal series.
Yeah.
But for me, it's all about Silence of the Lambs.
No. Brian Cox had, of course, played Hannibal Lecter previously in Manhunter, a movie that I wasn't super kind to when I reviewed it on the podcast.
I enjoyed it, so...
I mean, it has its qualities, but... A lot of people think that Brian Cox is sort of like the Hannibal Lecter. I would disagree. I actually think, for me, Anthony Hopkins is the Hannibal Lecter. Does he overplay his hand a little bit? Does he seem to be enjoying himself?
A little too much?
Maybe. But especially the scenes when he's in the cell, I don't mind it as much, because he has so little to entertain himself. He's got this rich mind that's always alive and thinking, and he's got these four walls and this warden who's blandly tormenting him. So anytime Clarice Starling's even in the building, his Christmas tree is just lit up,
definitely.
Right? So I kind of get that he's kind of excitable and performing for her.
And he's probably actually even holding back a lot, right? Because he's chomping at the bit, literally, figuratively, however you want to call it, right?
I think that the series gets worn with use as it goes on too. I mean, this is loudly the best chapter and the best film adaptation, in my humble opinion.
Definitely, mine as well.
The more we know about Hannibal Lecter, for me, the less powerful he becomes. And the direction they take Clarice Starling's character is just so disappointing. That it just takes the air right out of the tires of the franchise. And I can lay the blame right on Thomas Harris. That's not Hollywood fucking up a good thing. That's a good thing.
That was directly from the book.
Yeah, it was just parented to death by its own creator, unfortunately.
And if you read the book Hannibal, it reads almost like a screenplay for the movie. Like he was writing it for a movie as opposed to writing it as a good book.
It seemed like Thomas Harris was against the fact that Clarice Starling was the sort of standout character from Silence of the Lambs,
which is funny.
I think for him, the star of all of the books is Hannibal Lecter,
and for me, it's not.
Yeah.
For every movie and TV show besides Silence of the Lambs, Hannibal Lecter's the guy, right? But that's more due to the viewers' input than anyone else. They demanded more Hannibal, so they gave them more Hannibal.
So, and if you're going to say that Hannibal's performance might be a little bit too affected and not necessarily... It's theatrical, less real world. Well, I will then turn your attention to Mr. Ted Levine, who plays Buffalo Bill. He's got such a fantastic voice, that guy, Ted Levine. It was kind of strange.
It's kind of like marble in your mouth, kind of southern drawl, little...
Almost like someone's fucking with the speed, like they're just slowing it down slightly as he's delivering it. Somehow some knob is being twisted. I always like seeing that actor, and this was the first time I remember seeing him. I'm sure he's been in lots of stuff before, but this is the first time I remember seing him in a big movie, and he sort of stuck in my head. Pops up in movies like Heat and the remake of The Hills Have Eyes, and he's always got that voice. I think that he is utterly chilling as Buffalo Bill. And as much as the attention went to Anthony Hopkins, I think a lot of people missed just how good what Ted Levine was doing.
And I think real world talking, I truly think this is how...
It's closer to what it would look like.
How guys like that would act, right? Definitely chilling. The well scene when he's in the basement when she's screaming, he's like, "Oh!" Right? It's just like, I can see somebody with not job crazy doing that.
His conscious effort to dehumanize her, he refers to her as it. And when he's yelling at instructions, and he seems to be just petting his dog and not really looking at her.
Yeah, rub the lotion on its skin, or else it gets the hose again.
Absolutely, a very much quoted line. But even he knows like what he's doing is evil, and that this is a person that's dying for his own selfish needs.
But that's how he disassociates from that.
He willfully will disassociate. That's not a human being. That's
part of my suit.
Yeah,
it's part of my skin
that's fabric.
Suit. Yeah.
It's fabric.
It's a means to an end, and
a brilliantly played scene. There's the film's very well directed. I just blanked on the name. Jonathan Demme. Thank you. He won the Oscar for it. There's a great misdirection scene where we see we've got the address of the killer, and the FBI is going to
breaking down the door.
SWAT team's going to kick in every window and every door simultaneously. This son of a bitch is not going anywhere.
He's going down.
So we're about to take this guy down. Thank you, Clarice, for everything you do. Yep. Get us any information you can where we are.
We'll do some background information.
Yeah, we'll take care of you back at the office for some champagne.
Yeah.
Right? And we're cutting through all of these scenes, and we realize that these guys are breaking into an empty house.
Yeah.
And Clarice Starling is ringing the doorbell.
And it's ringing in the basement.
Yeah. And there's this scene where Ted Levine he's making a small talk and giving her the information and trying to get her out the door, where that moth flies by.
Yep.
And then flies away, and he sees it, and she sees it, and they both recognize who each other is.
Yeah.
And that moment is so brilliantly handled. Like for just that moment alone, the movie deserves such cred.
Definitely.
Let alone the classic, Pursuit in the Darkened Basement, where the killer is wearing night goggles, but poor Clarice is not. So we can see her struggling because she's never been in this basement in her life. She doesn't even know where the walls are. And he's walking so close to her, and his hands
brushing her hair.
It's so fun.
Creepy, man. That's creepy. And she did the right thing. Yeah. She turned and fired.
Yeah.
Right.
The second she heard the click of the hammer, it was time to play.
It was time to put some lead into something. Yeah, which was great. So, and the part shooting the window out and having that light shine in, and having that wind chime or whatever it was turn around with the butterflies on it. Just
and
perfect.
all of a sudden the sunlight breaking in. Yeah, it's just brilliantly handled, undeniably. I'm not saying anything really bad about The Silence of the Lambs. The series does not get any better than this, is in my humble opinion. It's basically all diminishing returns.
This is the top.
But if anything, like I said off the top of the review, if you've made it to 2016 and you haven't seen Silence of the Lambs yet, I can see you walking away. My guess is you'll still really like the movie, but you'll come away saying, "Really, Best Picture?"
Yeah, that was best. It was Best Picture, actresses, everything.
Yeah,
right?
It killed, and it sort of reminded Hollywood that people do have a hunger for dark stories if they're well told.
First horror movie to ever sweep the Oscars, ever win the Oscar, Best Picture.
There's been a few that have been nominated. The Exorcist, Rosemary's Baby, and Jaws, I think notably, were nominated, but nothing had won to this scale. Nothing had been embraced to this scale, and nothing this dark. Woman is being made into skin suits. And this is fully embraced by Hollywood, and awards are handed out.
Yeah.
It opened the door for horrors in a way that no other movie, I think, can.
And I think part of the reason is because it wasn't about the guy making the skin suits, right? If it was focused just on him killing ladies, it would be a totally different movie.
It's not a torture porn movie.
It is not. It is about
how much death do we see in this movie?
Very little.
Very little.
Yeah.
We see basically Hannibal Lecter dishing out some violence in his escapes.
Yep.
And we're told about violence, and we're shown the aftermath of violence.
We see in the autopsy room with the dead body, the dead girl with the diamond pattern out of her back. But other than that,
I think if someone had put a gun to my head and said, pick your favorite scene, that autopsy scene would be it. It's Clarice Starling's first autopsy, clearly.
Yep.
And Jack Crawford knows it, and he has her give dictation.
Yep.
So you're playing with the boys.
Yeah, you're playing with the big boys.
And she does it. She does a good job.
Yeah.
You can tell that it's working her nerves. Like, we can see it bothering her, but she's getting through it.
She's got it through it. And the same scene where she exits the police cop offers out. She's like, "Okay, guys, you've done your job. Now leave." It's her asserting her authority, right?
Yeah.
Which these guys have never seen before, but they leave.
Yeah. And the last thing, then, I think that it's just important as to why the movie echoed with the consciousness of the public, especially before the sequels came out, is that much like Halloween, it leaves you with the killer still out there, still at large. He does Clarice Starling the courtesy of calling her and saying,
I won't
"Don't
call
worry,
her.
I'm not a threat to you. You're
way
love,
too interesting."
Yeah, what does he say? The world is much more
better
interesting
place with you in it.
And the thing is that I believe him. Like I believe him in that context. Like he has nothing against Clarice at all.
Nope.
At all.
And throughout the whole movie, that's the reason he was talking to her, because he found her interesting.
Yeah.
That was part of the relationship.
Yeah. So yeah. So good. That's the one element maybe that they didn't sort of create at the time. This was sort of a horror movie thing, but we got the procedural, we got the female protagonist, and we got the killer is still out there. And if some homosexual groups got offended by the film, I apologize.
I'm sorry
that happened, but I don't think that the movie was about that. I really don't.
No.
I understand the bell you're ringing because due diligence, it's kind of true.
Yep.
Psycho, Norman Bates has got these, mommy issues. The Leatherface is in drag.
And all those, they were all based on Ed Gein.
Yeah.
Norman Bates, Leatherface,
and
Buffalo Bill.
Yeah.
Buffalo Bill was kind of a Mod Podge of Ted Bundy, Ed Gein.
But you see it again and again in horror movies. Sleepaway Camp, even like some of these, like, they're forced to live a life as a different gender, and it fucked them up so bad that they ended up killing.
Yep.
It is something that is seen a lot. It's unfortunate that they chose this movie. I understand why, because it was high profile. But
I don't think that's where the focus was, though.
And I don't think it's where the focus should be.
No.
We've come a long way.
Because really, if you really want to get down to it, they really kind of... The character of Buffalo Bill kind of wrote itself because it was based on other characters.
Yeah.
So they didn't really have to do much as far as writing him, right? Yeah. It's not like they made up, okay, this character is going to be gay, transgender, or anything. They didn't have to do that. It was ready-made.
And if the movie was saying all, serial killers are homosexual, or that homosexuality is some sort of telltale sign that the person might be a psychopath, then I would be here saying, that's really unfortunate. That sinks the ship for me. But that doesn't happen.
No,
that scene doesn't exist in the movie. It's just something about the killers that we learn, and it's not really explored. It's honestly not a huge deal in the movie.
No, and I think Hannibal talks about it for like 2 lines maybe about him being a patient, or a patient of his talking about him, right? And it's like 2 lines in the movie where they discuss his sexuality. Yeah. And then it's over. Then it's all people suit.
Yeah. It's more about, is Clarice going to solve this puzzle? And are we going to save this girl who is being starved at the bottom of this well? Or
and is Clarice going to save herself from Hannibal being in her head?
Yeah.
Right? Because he's messing with her.
All of those storylines work.
Mm-hmm.
So, bravo.
Yep. Bravo.
Well, there it was, Rick. That's 6 Tales of Madness that we have discussed. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
It sounded like we're quite a bit on the same page.
It
Are
did.
you going to walk away here with a prize? What's going to happen?
I don't know. I was hoping to have a little bit of a little fight going there, but yeah, we were on the same page, so which is fine. Nothing wrong with that. We'll see if our lists are the same.
We don't have to fight to make it interesting.
That's true.
You may be right, but I'm more
right. I'm right for the right reasons.
What was your least favorite of these 6 movies and why?
I'm gonna go with Pathology, just because of the lack of character development and the fact that I just didn't give a shit about any of them, except for Q. And I didn't get to see Alyssa Milano. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So that's number 6 for me.
Number 6, fair enough.
Number 5, I'm gonna go with Natural Born Killers.
Dun, dun,
I'm good. Dun, dun, dun. I'm gonna get a lot of flack for that, just because of the various reasons we talked about. It was about the sensationalism of violence in the media, driven by sensationalism of violence in the media. Right. So, like you said, you made the point of it very hypocritical.
It feels
it does. Yeah, you made an excellent point. So, number 5 is Natural Born Killers.
It is.
Number 4, gonna go Stuck. Enjoyable 85 minutes. Nothing really terrible to say. Nothing really glowing to say.
Right.
Just an enjoyable 85 minutes. Some poor schlub stuck in a windshield. Number 3, Seven. This would be tops on most of my list, but the two ahead of them are just much better. But Seven, definitely top 3. Great movie, great acting, great directing. Everything's great about it. I have nothing bad to say about it.
Right.
So, number 2 is going to be Citizen X. One of my first, next to Silence of the Lambs, it was one of my first real serial killer movies that I really got into. It's really spawned my interest in serial killers, even more so than Silence of the Lambs, really, because it sounds like we were talking about. Silence of the Lambs wasn't really about the serial killers; it was about Clarice.
Right.
So Citizen X is what really spearheaded my interest in the serial killer genre, I suppose you'd say. And number 1, of course, Silence of the Lambs. Just everything perfect about that movie. I have nothing bad to say. Well acted. All the Oscars that they got were properly doled out. I don't care if he was on screen for 11 minutes. He earned that 11 minutes, and he earned that Oscar, in my opinion.
I would maybe argue it was supporting actor.
All right, that's okay. Anyone who can carry a film for 11 minutes over 2 hours, man, he deserves it.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's like when Denzel Washington won Best Actor for Training Day.
Yeah.
And Ethan Hawke was nominated for Best Supporting Actor for Training Day.
Yeah.
When clearly Ethan Hawke was the main character, Denzel Washington was the supporting player. Like clear. I've seen that movie twice. It starts with Ethan Hawke waking up in the morning, and it ends with him falling into bed at the end. It's his training day. He's the main character. I don't know.
But the Oscars that year were.
Yeah, I could.
Well, yeah, we won't delve into.
If you want to talk about all the ways the Oscars are stupid,
yeah, it's a whole nother hour.
Yeah, we're gonna have to just dedicate a whole episode to the Oscars are stupid. Dude, we are so close.
Okay, shoot.
We're so close that my heart is breaking, because this is totally one of those cases where I'm trying to shine the light on I think something that's unsung. And as a result, we've just barely missed it.
All right.
You'll have to come back again, because we seem to be on a similar wave.
All right, I'll be back.
In 6th position, yes, Pathology. I don't know what to say now that I didn't say during the review. It is full of potential. Mm-hmm. I don't think that there's anything wrong with the actors. They're doing exactly what's asked of them. The screenplay writers, Neville and Taylor, sort of deal in exploitation cinema, and that is what this is. I've seen much better exploitation cinema, but this isn't terrible. It's certainly not boring. It's just outclassed by everything else in this list by a wide margin.
Yeah.
Even my controversially putting number 5 being Natural Born
Killers. Look at that.
Where we're agreeing, which some people would shake their heads in. I don't think I would argue that Pathology was a better movie than Natural Born Killers. I mean, at least Natural Born Killers was trying to be something.
Yeah.
I would argue that maybe it fails to be more than a piece of sort of flashy violence.
Yep.
Which is kind of too bad, because it seems to be criticizing flashy, empty violence. But
yeah,
it's tough. It's tough. I'm sorry, Oliver Stones, but not this time.
Yeah.
Not this time. I'm once again in agreement with you.
All right.
Stuck. And this is this little indie that could. And in this list of movies, we had big budget, David Fincher, movie stars.
Superstars, heavyweights.
This movie was made for no money by people who just love making movies without having rules, And I think it's pretty good for that. I think it's a good conversation piece.
Yeah.
The morality of it, the question was, why did she make those decisions?
And what would you do in her position?
And again, it's weird. I complain that I don't know why, but another part of me thinks if there was that scene where we were told implicitly this is why, I would probably be sitting here saying, but did they have to do that?
Right. It could have been either way, right? You're like, they ruined the movie for me. Why did they have to say that?
You're right. It seems strange to put Seven in 3rd position. Mm-hmm. And in the 1990s, I think I probably would have put Seven in 1st position. There would have been a time where I would have said confidently that I think Seven is a better movie than The Silence of the Lambs, but I'm not going to make that argument today.
All right.
I do think that Seven is a fantastic movie, and the fact that it's in 3rd place in this list of movies should just say more about the quality of the list.
First two, exactly.
Than it does about anything else. But there it is, the 7. Is the 7? No,
the 7.
7. Really, really good stuff, and that screenplay. was just a lot.
Spot on.
Yeah, I think that half the job was done. I mean, even if you didn't have a director as visually capable of Fincher, I think that script was going to ruffle some feathers, you know. Controversially.
Okay, here we go.
I'm putting The Silence of the Lambs in second place.
I have no problem with that.
Probably, like, history is going to tell me that I am completely up my own ass about this. And I am saying it's a fantastic movie. And it's so influential as to had its power somewhat deadened with age, I think. It's not, like, completely an empty experience, but, like, your average episode of Hannibal was way harsher than what would have been considered crazily explicit in even this 1991 horror movie. It's worth watching for Jodie Foster, it's worth watching for Ted Levine, and it's worth watching for Anthony Hopkins. And because it's an important horror movie. It's a horror movie that said that horror movies can win Oscars.
Yeah.
So
it broke boundaries.
Yeah. Ridiculously, perhaps, I'm going to put the lesser-known Citizen X in first place. I think there's a lot of power in the fact that this was a true story that I hadn't heard of, and that, I don't know, the heartbreakingness. There's such a malaise to the movie because this man just wants to stop the killing, and everyone around him seems to be stopping him from doing
stopping
it.
the
like,
killing. Yep.
The insanity of it, the madness of it, like. I think it's just an endlessly fascinating movie. I think that the cast is really good. I think that, you know, not a lot of people will have seen this one, so people listening to the podcast looking for something
watch it
new,
seek
it out.
It doesn't age. It ages well, I should say.
Yeah. It has aged fairly well. Like you can tell it was made, you know, on a limited budget, but you know, it's also a historic film. Like, it's a period piece,
exactly,
and you believe it.
Yeah.
So, this might be one of those cases where there's an early episode where I put, like, the 70s remake of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. The head of Alien.
Oh, wow, that must have ruffled.
And it was just like, oh, good. It's like, but part of me was like, everybody loves Alien. Everybody loves Alien. More people need to pay attention to Philip Kaufman's version of Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Was it Alien or Aliens?
Alien. The first one, the Ridley Scott one.
Okay.
It was tough, and I said it at the time, and it was just like this case, and that was the only spot on the list where we disagreed. So I feel like I kind of commied you with this, and I was just like,
no, not at all.
This is like, I've always had a great affection for this movie, and I just want more people to watch it.
Ditto. Nope.
So I'm putting it in number one and denying you a prize.
No worries, man.
Thanks so much, Rick. I really
You're
appreciate
very welcome.
you doing this. Like I say, if you want to do it again, you're always welcome. And
I think we'll do it again.
I can review. Yeah.
I'm a movie guy, so I watch movies and TV shows. That's what I do.
Yeah, well, no, I wait for those boys to go to bed, and then I watch something terrible and violent on the screen.
Terribly and violent. Yes. I got my wife into it too. I've poisoned her, so yeah, she's only into it too. Yeah, those are two of her favorite movies now too. So I did my job,
and that's good. So Pathology was kind of the only loser of the bunch. So 1 out of 6, I've done far worse.
And even Pathology, like, it
was not boring.
It was not boring. No, it just wasn't. I just felt it ripped off.
They can't all be Citizen X.
No, they can't all be Citizen X. No.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, no worries.
And so episode 67 of Rank and Review has come to a close. I hope you enjoyed that episode. Special thanks again to Rick Fair for coming out and doing that podcast. I don't know Rick real well, but I know he's got good taste in movies. Do seek out the podcast on Facebook and on iTunes. You can see the website at rankandreview.ca, where there is indeed an alphabetical list of all of the reviews, all of the back catalog of episodes. So give that a visit, give that a like. I hope you continue to listen to Rank and Review, and I hope you tell a film freak in your life that there's this podcast out there and that it's waiting for them. Until next episode, where giant monsters take over, I hope you guys enjoy. And thank you so much for listening.